name is Tracy McCooey, and I'm a circuit court judge in Montgomery County, Alabama, and I have been a circuit court judge since 1998. I was first elected, um, had an interesting race. I ran against a lawyer who had been an attorney for over 30 years, multimillionaire, who everyone laughed when they found out I was running and said, "You have no chance." But anyway, I beat him pretty soundly, and I got reelected in 2004 with no opposition. And so I've been a judge now going on 11 years. And prior to becoming a judge, kind of have an interesting background. First of all, I did not go to law school to be a lawyer. I went to law school to be an FBI agent, and I knew that was a good way to get into the FBI. And I went to the University of Alabama Law School and worked as a warrant clerk while I was in law school. I worked 4 in the afternoon till midnight, and then I was on call from midnight till 8 in the morning and, wrote warrants for people, and had no interest in working at law firms or didn't care about people where they were going to clerk or any of that because I was going into the FBI. And my third year, I went through the interviews and the background check and the physical fitness and got accepted as a new agent trainee and went to the FBI Academy after law school. Absolutely loved it. Things were going great. I was in I think it was my 14th week, and started having a lot of trouble with my eyesight and could not see to hit anything. Ended up losing my eyesight, my left eye. At the time, did not know what was going on, and eventually found out that I had multiple sclerosis, which I was totally shocked about because I'd always played sports and been real athletic, and I looked at him and said, "I think you got that wrong." But anyway, needless to say, being an FBI agent was not going to be in my future, which was pretty devastating because, like I said, that's the only reason I went to law school. But I do well with it. Like I said, it was definitely not something that I ever thought in a million years that I would have, or, I was shocked because, like I said, I was going to be an FBI agent for the rest of my life, and, being a lawyer was not in my future, and definitely not being a judge. That is not something that I dreamed about or, sat around in law school and thought, when I'm a judge one day. I never thought. If you told me I was going to be a judge, I would have laughed at you. That was not something that I ever thought about doing. But I tell people, life can change and it can throw you curveballs, and, you do what you can with them, and sometimes it turns out better than you think. And I said it's not necessarily a bad thing when you don't get to do what you thought you were going to do. But my eyesight eventually came back, and I was doing well and was not having problems, and came back to Montgomery, and I had not taken the bar exam, and didn't know what job I was going to do. And so the DA at the time had created a new drug squad, and he said, "I know you've got law enforcement background, why don't you come be on my drug squad?" And I was doing well, wasn't having any problems, so I said, why not? So I did undercover drug work for a year and kicked in doors and did search warrants and got to do all my fun cop stuff, so to speak. And I took the bar exam and passed it, and he said, "Well, now that you've taken the bar and passed it, you need to be a real lawyer," which I was scared to death because that was nothing I'd ever thought about doing. But I became an assistant DA and did that for 3 years and absolutely loved it, and prosecuted every case out there. And then one day I was sitting in my office, and one of the judges called me and said it was time to leave the DA's office. And I said, "Why? I love it. I don't want to leave." And he said, "Well, you need to get some civil experience." And I said, "Well, I don't know anything about civil law." And he said, "No, you need to go on this interview." So I went and interviewed with the Alabama State Employees Association and got hired. I don't know why they hired me, but they did. And I stayed there for 7 years, and I was the chief legal counsel, and I represented We had about 22,000 members in our association and represented every problem that state employees had, and absolutely loved it. Again, I did not know anything about civil law when I started, but learned a lot and loved what I did and had a great boss. And so my boss, after 7 years, told me one day that he was leaving. And I said, no, you can't go, you're a great boss. And he said, well, you're leaving too. And I said, oh, is there a job where you're going? And he said, no, he said, Judge Gordon's retiring and you're going to run for a seat. And I said, well, I've never even thought about being a judge. And he said, well, you've got the criminal background and the civil, and you've been a lawyer now for 10 years. I think you can do it. And I said, well, let me go home and talk to my husband and my parents, because they're the only 3 people besides you that are going to think I can do this. So I went home and sat down and talked to them, and I said, you know, we're going to be the only ones that are going to be working on this campaign, so what do y'all think? And they said, yeah, you can do it. So I went back and I told my boss, I said, I'll run for judge, but on 2 conditions. I said, one, I said, I got to run as a Democrat. And he looked at me and he said, well, you're the only person I know that admitted they were a Republican. I mean, you started Young Republicans in law school, and, you know, when there were only 2 Republicans at a meeting. And I said, no, because I got to be a judge for all people. I've got to campaign with everyone. He said, that's fine. And he said, what's your second condition? And I said, I'm not spending 1 dime of my own money. I said, if I raise a nickel, that's what I spend. If I raise $1 million. And he said, that's fine. So I spent a year and a half campaigning, had the best time, ran against a gentleman who had been a lawyer in this town for years and years, was a senior partner at a very established defense firm, was like 5th generation Montgomeryan. I mean, no one thought that I had any chance of winning. And so I beat him pretty soundly, and the rest is history. And that's how I got here. But in all fairness, I thought if I became a judge that I had some good ideas of some things that I wanted to do. So I was excited about the opportunity to be able to do those things. When I ran for judge, I told people that I had been a police officer, I'd been an assistant DA, and that the system as I knew it really didn't work. You know, I watched people, I locked people up, I prosecuted people, I watched people commit crimes over and over. I thought something just doesn't work about the way we do things. And I had read a lot about restorative justice and believed in a lot of those concepts. And I thought, if I'm ever in a position to implement some of those things, I plan on doing it. And I knew about other programs that I liked. And so one of the things that I promised people in this county was, if they elected me, I was going to be a judge that tried things, and if it didn't work, we'd do something else. But I said, I certainly will not be a judge that wears a robe from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and does nothing. I said, I will be a judge who is doing programs and trying to make the criminal justice system better. So I had lots of ideas of things that I was going to do.